verse starts with Jesus saying, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I say?" As far as I can see, you are the people who do what true parents say, who follow God's voice in your conscience, in your heart, and therefore you are building an everlasting community. And I really want to help you see that and really know that that's true and have the confidence to understand that that's something you're really part of. Because many times you don't feel so confident about that. You don't believe even that you're someone who's doing that. Now, I went to visit sort of around Highgate, Muswell Hill yesterday to 40th birthday. It's very interesting with being a whole bunch of people who are all 40. Because I guess if you invite friends to your 40th birthday, a lot of the people are going to be around the same age. And they'll all finish university around the same time as well. Anyway, it's kind of, most of the people there were from the Jewish community, a lot of them originally from Manchester, so it was kind of all these exotic northern accents, a little bit dumbed down. And it was really interesting to see this community of people who were built on a rock. They were built on the rock of Abraham's faith several thousand years ago. And there they are in Muswell Hill. This one was a more, I would say, particularly more middle-class Jewish community. You know, you've got TV comedy writer, you've got someone who works for Ofcom, etc., etc. And then at the end, someone came in. He looked like he was delivering a pizza. Sort of beard, helmet, long hair. And my friend introduced him to me. And apparently, we'd been at university together. And he remembers after I just came back from America, and everyone was sitting around the kitchen table at our student house, throwing questions at me. And he said, "I was so annoyed, Simon. All you could do was quote the Bible." I said, "Really? I didn't think I knew the Bible back then much." And anyway, I was actually on my way out of the pub to go home and get ready for you guys this morning. But I ended up outside till pretty much everyone else had left because he engaged me in a conversation. And he described himself, although Jewish, as a proactive atheist. And we had this very long conversation. He's also a musician. I told him what I've been doing. I said, "What have you been doing since university?" He goes, "I'm a failed musician." And I said, "Oh, that sounds really cool." He goes, "No, it's not. It's very sad, actually." And he's been teaching music technology to young people in London in difficult situations. And now he's lost his job because of the cuts. And he gave some good social comment on that, how, you know, with this kind of work, you don't just need to give people carrots, you need the stick as well. You need the carrot and the stick to help young people in difficult situations. And what else did I want to share from him? But, you know, he walked into, because everyone there was quite sort of aspirationally successful and everything, and he walked in with his long hair and his beard as a failed musician, and just, it's like you know, kind of like a breath of fresh air, albeit a very strong atheist one. And he was really a purist, you know. He was telling me all the things that he doesn't like about religious people and religion and et cetera, et cetera. And so we had this great long conversation. So anyway, that was quite a digression from just really sharing this point about how actually it was quite profound to see this community that a long time ago was built on this rock of faith that Abraham started and is still there today. So it made me think about our community and will we still be here in London in 100 years, 500 years? You know, like the Christians came to Rome, they're still there, right? You know, quite prominently right in the middle of Rome. And yeah, we actually used to have a lot more communities around the UK, didn't we? Yeah. In all the big cities and so forth, but a lot of them are not there anymore. And will ours still be here? Our community, you and I, we, all together. Or even if some of us move on, will we leave someone behind? So, Are we building an everlasting community? So, what I want to get across to you also today is that we can become a congregation of community builders. And I think all of us, we want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. That's why community is important. We also all want to be involved as people of faith in God's kingdom building, as being part of his plan and his work, and feeling directly involved in it. But it's not always easy and obvious to know how to do that, to be part of it. And I don't always feel confident in myself or in my community or my organization. Faith also is not an easy topic, really, to always share with other people. It's not something people always find it a natural thing to talk about. And when, at the same time, being a community rooted in faith, we don't want to avoid faith as a topic. So this reading from Luke, where Jesus talks about someone who's dug down deep to a rock. What does that mean for us, digging down deep? What are we digging down to find that's going to make this an everlasting community, a house that never gets washed away? Yeah. And that's something that we find through our practice, like Jesus said, through someone who puts those words into practice, who studies them, researches them, reflects and prays about them, and then applies them in their life. So I think our study is a big part of this whole digging down deep. And yet, couldn't we make it easier for everybody, not just ourselves, to be able to dig down deep and find that rock? Why does it sometimes always seem so hard for people to do that? Could we make it easier for each other and make it simpler for other people to have the right tools to dig down and find that rock that they want to build their life on? Another thing about our community is that as it develops, its strength is its diversity. God isn't interested just in preachers, people who talk a lot at other people, or to other people, or with other people. Actually, what makes a community attractive is when people are going along many different walks of life and making inroads into the world in many different ways. And in that way, God has many ways to influence this world. Now, I wouldn't be here this morning if our brother Kunihiro Toma didn't make a last-minute appointment for me at his clinic yesterday and spend 45 minutes of very strenuous physical work, kneading and beating up my back and making it possible for me to walk. So we have people with all kinds of different abilities and skills in our community. You know, if we have an event, we have so many people who know how to prepare food here. You know, that's really important. And we have drivers and volunteers of all kinds, people who know how to manage money well, how to account for money in our community, and they help us to be able to function financially. And it's this diversity that also gives our community strength. And today actually is the first day of a European 40-day condition. So the last one finished yesterday, the new one starts today. And many brothers and sisters around Europe are taking part in this. And also as a community, I'd like us to, over the next 40 days, to accomplish something together. in terms of becoming community builders, people who are able to really feel involved in developing our community. And I know we haven't done so much to prepare for this 40 days, but we can even see, I don't want you to worry about that, to be quite honest. I just want you to feel over the next 40 days we can work on something together. And I'll give you something at least for the next 7 days to work on at the end of this. And the whole idea behind this 40 days condition for our European movement is to help build this momentum towards fulfilling Father's request that we educate or teach or share his vision with 13,000 people through sharing his autobiography and through going out and being a witness to our faith. And what I think our particular community's unique mission is to help show our wider community how we can, all our unification communities, how we can close this gap between the aspirational goal of teaching 13,000 people and the reality of a group of people who are unsure how to reach out to one person. Yeah? Is that unfair? By how? By becoming a team of community builders, a congregation of community builders together. That we work together on a model as a community, all of you, whether you're at school or university or at work or on the dole or in the house or ill or whatever it is, your situation, that we work together as a team, as a congregation, on seeing how we empower each person who's willing to give it a go, because you've got to be willing to give it a go, otherwise, to empower each person who's willing to give this a go, to be able to reach out and share the blessing of God in their life. And so, one of the things I want us to be able to do in this 40 days is to put some new tools in each other's hands in order to help one another to be successful at this. And to help each other to become confident about this building my life on a rock. Being able to dig down deep and find that rock and really build on it. You know, Jesus also, when he was talking like this as Luke's recounting his experience of Jesus, Jesus also talking about building the kingdom of heaven, and he says, what is the kingdom of God like? And he compares it to a mustard seed. What shall I compare it to, he says. It is like a mustard seed. When a man took and planted in his garden, it grew and became a tree, and the birds perched in its branches. So mustard seed's probably about the smallest seed you can find, and it turns into this very, very lush bush that lots of different things can go and live in. And so I think also that's a very helpful analogy for our community to consider how we are, based on this precious word that we have and blessing that we have in our life, that may for some of us feels sometimes small, but how we can allow it to grow into something that many people can come and inhabit and find a refuge in and security in and a home in. You know, at the ODP Plus workshop in Germany I've just been to, it's about 80 teenagers there. They've got these T-shirts on. On the back it says, I am at home. You know, this sense of identity of really being at home and living with God. So this issue that I want us to deal with, if we can go to one of the first slides. This is a statistic that just want us to consider and then reflect on it as a community for ourselves. 98% of Christians have neither been envisioned nor equipped for mission in 95% of their waking lives. So, what does this mean? I'm actually trying to just continue on a little bit from what I was talking about last week with the peach and the orange. So, 98% of Christians in 95% of their waking lives don't feel empowered to be a Christian. And so, well, how's it for you and I? How many of us in our waking lives feel 95% of the time empowered and completely envisioned to really be unificationists? Maybe, as I say that, you're thinking, well, what does it mean to be a unificationist? So that's a big problem for Christianity. If there was a similar statistic for us, I don't know, we'd have to do a questionnaire. Maybe we can do that this 40 days and find out what the statistic is for our community. How many people feel empowered and fully tooled up to be a unificationist most of their waking life? Who's this a real problem for? Anybody? Who's this a real issue for? This statistic? Yeah, God. It's really a headache for God, isn't it? Because he's got 5% of people's waking lives. He's going to have some pretty cool strategies to get any results with that amount of time. If you go to the next slide, you just imagine you've got 100 people. Let's say we're 100 people, and you're stepping out of their door every day. And if you go to the next slide, actually, in the end, though you've got 100 people stepping out every day, you've only got 2 who really know what they're trying to do in terms of their identity and their faith. Who feel that they've been empowered by their church or by their movement. God actually would like to really be involved with those other 98 people, wouldn't he? But who's going to solve that problem for God? Yeah. So, of course, this isn't just a problem in relation to the Christian church or our movement. It's God's problem in respect to this whole world, isn't it? The circumstances in which people can feel their identity can actually be quite extreme. You don't have to be in a comfortable place, an easy place, to actually share something of your identity and faith with someone and help them. So, who's heard of the story of the unnamed servant girl? Yeah. So, this is a pretty extreme example of a place to witness, but if you've ever read the Book of Kings, you might know that Israel's always getting invaded, and there's a general called Naaman, and he's the commander of the army for the king of Aram, and they've just done a little raid into Israel, and they've taken all the spoils of their war and stolen a few people as well. And so I'll just read you a little bit about what happens. Now, Naaman, he was a great man in the sight of his master, the king, and highly regarded because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. He was a valiant soldier, but he had leprosy. Now bands of raiders from Aram had gone out and had taken captive a young girl from Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "If only my master," meaning the general, "would see the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." So Naaman went to his master the king and told him what the girl from Israel had said, and the king said, "By all means go. I will send a letter to the king of Israel." So Naaman left, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of clothing, the letter that he took to the king of Israel read, "With this letter I am sending my servant Naaman to you so that you may cure him of his leprosy." This all started with a young girl who doesn't even have a name in the Bible, who's sort of been taken from her home and taken to a foreign land and made a slave. As soon as the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his robes, meaning he got really upset, and said, "Am I God? Can I kill and bring back to life? Why does this fellow send someone to me to be cured of his leprosy? See how he's trying to pick a quarrel with me." So he thinks this is all a trick to get into another fight. But of course then, I think it's Elisha. Is it Elisha? Yeah. Elisha, the prophet, who's the one who eventually cures the general of leprosy, says, "Send the general over to me and I'll cure him." And he tells him to wash in the Jordan 7 times. And the general thinks, well, we've got much nicer, cleaner rivers in our country, and turns around. And anyway, it's a long story. But the point I want to get across to you is all of this king writing a letter, this general going to visit a prophet in the country he's just raided, is all the result of one very humble young girl who doesn't have any power, any authority in the context of her environment. But she has this faith that's really built on a rock deep inside her. And that has power, and that has a different kind of authority that we all hope to find. I don't know what situations you'll find in your week ahead, but I think one of the things that will help you to find them, the right ones, the places where you can be a witness, in the way that you feel is appropriate in the moment, according to your intuition and your prayer. I think what will help you is to know what you're going to be doing next week. And so if we just go to the next slide, I want us to, in a minute, just take a look at our weekly schedules, and I want you to ask, again, this is going on from the theme last week, what makes your week holy and sacred? What do you see in your week as holy and sacred? And how much of your life is our community's culture able to embrace as sacred and holy? In the end, it's like saying, how many opportunities are you going to have next week, actually, to bear witness to who you are? If you go to the next slide, this is Holy Week for a lot of us. This is what's holy, really, we regard as holy. You've got going witnessing door to door. Maybe you take part in a small group meeting, and you go to Sunday service in the morning or the evening. And that's, in a sense, what we recognize or affirm as being holy. Yeah? So how many hours has God got there? 8 hours out of your week. Yeah, that's that problem we were talking about earlier. So the next slide is going to be an example of an art student who sees a lot more holy things in his week. As an art student, I'll explain that in a minute. So next slide. So art students, if you study philosophy, English, or history of art or history, then you're dealing with some pretty deep, profound things, and so you tend to sleep till about midday, compared to science students, we'll see in a minute. Okay? But this person, although, they're sleeping till midday, but they've considered in their weekly schedule all the different things they're doing as holy. Their lectures, their studies, their campus outreach, going and sharing about their faith with fellow students, their socializing also, whether they even go for a pizza or for a music concert, everything in their week they see as holy, and they're trying to constantly live in the presence of God. And so, because again, otherwise, if that's not the case, then It makes going out witnessing, as we like to say, in terms of direct witnessing, very awkward if everything else in his week is not regarded as holy. But because he's regarding everything else as holy, then when he does go out, it actually feels quite normal, quite natural. And the next one, this is a science student. They get to college much earlier, they study more, and they have more lectures. I can sort of say this because I was an art student, okay? You may disagree. And again, this science student has decided to regard everything in his week as holy, and whether it's an indirect or a direct witness, it's all been done in the presence of God. Next one. And here's someone who's going to work every day. They also go to church, and they come here on a Wednesday for a Divine Principle lecture. They go out on a Tuesday evening giving Father's autobiography. But they still regard everything else they do in their week as holy. And so they have many more opportunities and many different ways in which to share God's blessing. So one of the best moments, I think, for someone who's working is when they're commuting. Because most people are either spending their time feeling tired or worrying about the day ahead or what they left back at home. And it's an ideal time to be creative and try to meet people's needs and start a conversation. And I've had experiences where I've met people on the bus or on the tube, which has, really turned into a friendship and a relationship that, is ongoing. And so these are times where people are willing to talk if you're brave enough to talk to them. And it may be just you read something as you're going to work that might be interesting to other people to discuss. And I don't know, if you really feel you're trying to build this everlasting kingdom, then you're not going to just say, well, that's just the time when I go to work. That's just the time I come back from work. You're going to be thinking, how can I make this time sacred? How can I make this time holy? Even, I'm sorry, but why on earth have I put Celebrity Big Brother on that? I mean, goodness me. Jesus spent a lot of his time talking and being with the most difficult, problematic, messed up people, or anyway, the people other people weren't so keen on, at least, the tax collectors and the drunkards and so forth. Yeah. So he really understood the whole range of the society he lived in. Well, if you want to do that with our society, watch Celebrity Big Brother. Yeah? You'll understand some of the motivations and problems that are going on. Okay. Next slide. So 8 days a week, we've got this 8-day calendar that we're all still learning to use with Anshil. Being a unification is found in the reality of society and daily life, because our faith is no way separate from this reality. We must strive through our actions to be exemplary models for others. What do you think about that? Good. Yeah? Do you know where I got that from? A Buddhist girl I met on my way into work on the train. She sent it to me in a slightly different wording. It said, being a Buddhist is found in the reality of society and daily life, etc., etc. So it's always good to admit to your plagiarism. But the point is, she just listened to the conversation I was having with someone else and joined it and started to intuitively share what she's inspired about in terms of her faith as a Buddhist. And so she sent me, a whole bunch of material and so forth. The whole idea, like David shared in his prayer, is that we are trying to unite together with all the other good people who share the same principles that we have, and together build this everlasting kingdom. So, think that's the last slide. Yeah. So I want to give you something to take home with you. And if you like, offer you something. You don't. Anyway, if you want to take one, take one. If you don't, just pass them on. And when you've taken one, pass them on anyway. There's only 30 there. But if we run out, we'll go down and print some more and leave them outside. But it's got on the front a calendar, a blank calendar. It only starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, so I know for some of you it's a bit late. But you can scribble things in earlier on there. And it finishes at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. So it finishes a bit early. But anyway, it's a calendar. You could use it. And what I want to suggest is that before you go to bed tonight, that you write down what you're going to be doing next week. And you can write down, you can think about all the commitments that you have, because I know all of you have a lot of different commitments. And then also you can think about what your commitments are in terms of the direct witness that we're trying to do as a community here. So when we had our annual gathering, Jack Corley spoke about the road to 2013 and Father's request that he shared when he came to Britain about sharing 430 copies of his autobiography. And so that's one thing. We don't maybe completely understand exactly why Father wants us to distribute that number, and we may have other questions. But as Jesus said, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I say? Yeah? It's those words that are echoing through history, and maybe sometimes it feels like they're slapping us in the face. He says, but as for everyone who comes to me and hears my words and puts them into practice, well, we regard Father in very much the same way as Christians regard Jesus. And we actually see Father as someone who is taking this role like Jesus' younger brother, wanting to help his older brother complete the providence that God has given them to complete. And so if he's asking us to distribute these books, then, well, I think the minimum thing we could do is just to distribute them. But if we've got a sense of wanting to really be an owner, then we might want to think how best to do that. But at least to start to somewhere fit that into my weekly schedule. Because I don't know about you, but I feel like I've got a lot of commitments. And unless I put that in tonight, into my weekly schedule, the odds are high. The odds are really high that I might go through next week not giving anyone a book. There may just randomly come along a situation where I have a book and someone asks me for one, but unless that happens, if I haven't put it in my schedule, it's quite likely not to happen. Now, it doesn't have to necessarily be giving a book. It may be something else. It may be going to visit your neighbours. It may be even inviting your neighbours over for dinner. It may be, and this is where I want us to understand about being a congregation of community builders, it may be giving someone else in your community some space in their schedule so that they can go out and do something. Because, I know, and I've called up Aniko, or AJ and Aniko yesterday to check this out and get my facts straight, but I got the feeling that Aniko Rai is someone who just, in her heart, naturally would love to have more time to go out and witness. And it's really hard, I think, when you're in a movement and you're always getting told you have to do lots of things, but no one's really saying, okay, well, you've got 6 kids at home. How are we going to make this possible for you? Yeah? It's really putting people in between a rock and a hard place. So I think to solve that, what someone could do, and I said to Annika, I'll apologise if she gets 30 phone calls about people offering to babysit, but if someone said to Annika, hey, Annika, I know you want to get out and sort of share with people, so I can come over for a couple of hours, and I'll bring someone with me because 6 kids, maybe I need 2 people. And you've got a couple of hours to go out into your community and meet people and build relationships and become a community builder, tribal messiah, whatever you want to call it. And And if you're going there to help babysit, you're actually playing a role as a community builder, not only within your community, but helping to expand it as Annika goes out and does that. And there may be many other situations like that, which if we think just that little bit more, we could make a lot more things possible. But all of this, like I said, it really depends on whether we are all, during this 40 days, 40 days starting today, willing to give it a go. So this is really a question, I think, comes down to commitment from all of us. And just want to read you something from Father about commitment. You may kneel all the way down to the ground to pray. But the most important thing is that you create an environment of commitment first. Unless your basic attitude is ready, no amount of prayer will be useful. So, I want you to think about that today, about whether you would like to commit to this 40 days, because it is a problem. I mean, for me, if you want to know, frankly speaking, it's a problem how organizationally in our movement, we tell people we're starting a 40-day condition, but how much do we really help people and consider the mechanisms that need to be in place for people to feel committed? So I'm giving you this calendar as a mechanism for you to consider getting involved over the next 40 days and developing your commitment. And by filling this out for the week ahead, looking at all the things, I've got school at 9 o'clock on Monday, there's a Divine Principle lecture on Wednesday, I might come to that, so I'll put that in there, just to remind me. But maybe you have something else on a Wednesday evening, put that in there. Maybe you have a social event on Friday night, etc., etc. All the things, your work, your commute, put it in there. And then say a prayer to God and tell him that this is your schedule for this week and you want him to bless it. You want him to be involved in it, to create situations in it, to protect you as you go through it. I don't know why I hurt my back playing football in Germany. Whether I just didn't warm up enough, or the ground was uneven, or I'm 39 and just not as much of a spring chicken as I was 20 years ago. But another part of me is thinking maybe it's because I didn't do all the things I should have done in my week, and somehow God wasn't really able to protect my back. You may think that's superstitious, I don't know, but I personally think that if you tell God what you're going to do and you do it, the odds are high that he's going to be helping you to make it happen. So, yeah, exactly. So if you can also put in there, say half an hour or an hour where you think you could fit in going out with the autobiography, or maybe making a phone call earlier on in the week. I'm going to call David down in East London on Monday to see if he'd like to go out with me on Wednesday, or I'm going to call Peter over in Wembley on Tuesday to see if he wants to meet up on Friday, and I'm going to call so-and-so who's got two kids at home to see if she needs some help so I can give her a chance to go out. If we can start to think of our week like that and fill it out, we're creating a whole range of possibilities. We don't even know what's going to come out of it, but God will make something out of it for the sake of his providence. So, okay. I think just so you know, on the back of that is a sheet that's going to help you keep track of the people you share the autobiography with, because last thing I think Father wants us to do is just hand out 430 books. He's interested in the people, not the book, right? So we went round Marshall and Joanna's estate last week, And, we met a couple of people and shared the autobiography with them. One lady came to the door and then she said, "Oh, hang on a sec, let me just go and do myself up." Went back inside, came back a few minutes later with a nice little wig on. And, we had a chat. She took the book. I've got her number. And I said, "I'll come back in a couple of weeks." And she said, "Yeah, and then let's sit down and talk about it." So it can happen. Okay, do you want to join me in prayer? Heavenly Father, today... We pray that our week ahead can be something that we offer to you, that we can not just offer it to you in a vague way, but in a very specific and responsible way, so that you can be fully involved in not just 5% of our week, but as unificationists, you have at least 95% of our waking lives to move in and operate in. Heavenly Father, please guide and protect and nurture each brother and sister throughout this week, and I report these things to you in my name, Simon Cooper, Blessed Central Family, RJ. Thank you.
Water you turn into wine. Open